Hey, good morning. It's Jack Kelly, and I'm excited and proud to share our inaugural Christine. So this is something new that we just started, and what we like to do is have a podcast. Probably, there may be some others like this. I'm not sure, but the first one to really focus on people and their careers, how to interview, how to find a new job, how to navigate your current job if you want a promotion and you want to advance. This is specifically designed for people who are very career-oriented, who are motivated, who want to move forward with their life, who may be happy where they are but want a better job, want to earn more money, get to that next level in the career. And but also somebody who maybe just wants to say, how do I navigate internally? How do I get a raise? How do I get a promotion? Our target is to really help out people who are career-minded and want to succeed, people who are in human resources, people who are recruiters, job seekers, managers, hiring managers, really across the board, and provide some unique value. Our backgrounds are primarily in recruiting, so we've been recruiters for personally 20 plus years, placed 5,000 mid to senior level executives with a huge array of Wall Street companies, investment banks, brokerage firms, trading firms, private equity, hedge funds, and so we bring a lot to the table in terms of just how this whole process works, and want to share it with you and to really empower you to move forward with your career. And with me today, we have Christine, who is our Chief Operating Officer here at our family of companies, the recruiting side. She's also the editor for Compliance X, our newsletter that goes out to 100,000 people, a little humble brag there, and Compliance Search, our recruiting arm. And Nicole is our Director of Marketing, and she's responsible for actually coming up with the idea for the podcast and putting it all together. So if it's really terrible, it's not me.
Just throw it all on me. Thanks, Jack.
So I'm just here, following orders. She's putting it together. So yeah. So
don't
don't point the finger at me. Because I'm not good at talking. So yeah. So anyway, the first one, what I want to talk about today is this. I figure I want to go in order. And just to give a kind of a shameless plug here, we're putting a book together to help people with their career. So this podcast is going to kind of dovetail with the book in terms of starting out right from the beginning. Before you embark upon a job search, to make sure you're looking for the right reasons and you're leaving for the right reasons. Oftentimes, what I'll encounter is that somebody will maybe get a slight from a manager, maybe a missed promotion, maybe there's an annoying coworker. There's, a whole array of different things that will push someone out the door. Now, some are really valid, some aren't. This might be crazy coming from a recruiter, but I would really coach people that to make sure when you're leaving, you really know you have to leave. You know that there's no future, you're not going to move forward, you're not going to make more money, you're not going to get a promotion, the boss is a jerk, and you have to be clear, because when you do embark upon that search, trust me, despite what you read in the papers and you hear in the news about this is the hottest job market ever, full employment, everything is great, low unemployment, it's hot. So you have that, but I got to tell you, for most people, the job search is not easy at all. And for some types of people, it's really brutal. So before you start on it, you want to make damn sure, you have things, lined up. So just to throw it out, let's tackle first, what I think, from my own experience, and literally, without exaggeration, for the last 20 years, easily speak to 10, 15, 20 people a day, every day, make it sound bad, like every day, all day for so long. So you really get insight to why people leave, when they do, did they go for the right reasons, and was it successful? So let me throw it to you guys. Just working together. Do you have a sense of like what are some of the, what you hear in the office, like some of the good reasons to leave, and what are some of the bad stuff? What do you guys think?
One reason people leave is because they feel micromanaged.
Wait, is that a hit? Is that a subtle like
dig at you?
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
it is.
Wait, what do they call? What is that? Wait, because we also the cool thing in this office, we have everyone from baby boomers to Gen X's to millennials, Gen Z. So like sometimes the lingo, I'm not sure. Like when you say that, is that what you call a sub?
I just subtweeted you. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was
real life subtweet. There you go.
So if you have a micromanager, that's pretty bad, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And if there's too much politics in the office, too much going on, some people get really uncomfortable with that. So that's one thing they want to kind of steer clear of. Mm-hmm. So for sure, that would be another reason that would push somebody to leave.
Also, a fight with the boss.
Yeah, definitely any uncomfortable situations. If there's any tension in the office between coworkers, there's, no collaborations going on between team members. That's a huge, point for people to just kind of break and say, I need to change from this.
Do you think it makes sense to just say, hey, I'm out of here, or try to reconcile it first? What do you guys think?
I think a little bit of both. I mean, you can only try so much before you decide it's not the right move for you right now, and you need to get out of the space that you're in. But I think to try a little bit to either work things out with your boss or coworkers, or just make things better for the company all around is definitely a good idea. But
I mean, I think so too, because what I see, and this happens really often, let's say your boss is micromanaging. In fact, I literally just spoke with somebody yesterday who, started this new job, and he's been there less than a year, and he was supposed to report to, a senior level executive. And so all of a sudden, this other person who was there before him has kind of a cozy relationship with that senior exec. And now she's going to him for everything. And the guy who I placed has to kind of report to this other person that was never brought up. And he was telling me the guy's a micromanager and he has no, experience managing. And so he's at a crossroads. I'm here under a year. I really like the company. I like the people. But it's kind of odd that you signed me up for one thing and now I have this other guy who is micromanaging me, and when I looked up the other guy, he doesn't have as much experience as my candidate who I placed. My candidate has way more, so it's weird. And then he was saying things like, okay, every email he sends out. Now, I hope that guy's not listening to this, because then that's kind of weird, but probably not. I don't think anyone's going to listen to us at first until we get some traction, so we can say anything we want. So what happened, he was telling me that if he sends out an email, the guy has to look at his email before he sends it out. If he does some, and this is in the compliance space, because that's my forte. So if, let's say, they're doing a surveillance run, he's going to overcheck everything he did. This is a guy who's been doing it for 15 years or more. So he spoke to both the guy who's his quote unquote manager, because he's not really officially his manager, and to the executive, and they both kind of danced around it. So Nicole, this is kind of what you're saying. Sometimes you bring it up, and it's weird that in the corporate world is never really clean. So he brings it up and speaks to that executive, and they both kind of danced around it. So he's left what do I do? So I think what I noticed, to just echo what Christine and Nicole were saying, I think if, let's say, you've been in a job for a certain amount of time and you're not getting promotions but other people are, if you're not getting you're not getting raises and other people are, you're not getting bonuses that other people are getting, where you're looking around and say, wait a minute, what's going on here? Why is everybody getting something I'm not? That's a big warning sign. If the boss is really, yes, a micromanager, but also if the guy, the guy's just a big jerk, if he's an ass. There's some bosses who are just, terrible. They're mean, they're rude, they're loud, they're obnoxious, they belittle you, they yell in front of, I've heard from candidates all the time, they'll have managers just berate them in front of everybody, which is so demeaning and humiliating, who undermine them, who they'll have someone work the whole weekend, do a project, and then the guy will take, the credit for it.
Right.
So when you see these really poor managers, but really ugly, really doing bad stuff, this person's evil. Now, let's be honest. Anybody who's worked for 5 minutes in the corporate world, there are people out there who are just shitty people. Their power goes to their head. They're corrupted with their power. They're ruthless. They only care about themselves. They only want to advance their own careers. They couldn't care less about your career. They have no interest in how you are. Do you have a meaningful job or not? They just want the power. They want the money. They want the advancement. They couldn't care less. when you had those, to me, that's kind of a valid reason. You know what I mean? When you realize that, like the way it's structured, you're never going to get ahead. You're never going to get any more money. You could always knock your head against a wall. And that's when you have to say, you know what, I have to leave because I'm not going to get anywhere. And a mistake I notice with people is that they delude themselves. They think, hey, you know what, it's going to be different. You know, Christine is going to start treating me better because, you know, she asked if I wanted a cup of coffee this morning. You know, Nicole is going to give me a raise because, you know, she said, hey, good job, you know? And you take little morsels, like a treat, you know, like a dog takes a little treat and they're all happy. And then you pretend that everything is better. But sometimes what you have to do is realize, look at all the signs and say, wait a minute. They're just kind of humoring me, but in the end result, you know, one little pat on the back doesn't make up for stealing my ideas in front of a meeting of the board of directors and, you know, humiliating me and yelling at me in front of the whole team. That's when I have to leave. You know, that's when. Now, I would suggest, as Nicole brought up before you do that, you know, maybe you do try to engage in some dialogue. You know, you try to sit down and see, because you know what, maybe there's a valid reason. You know, maybe you really suck at your job and you're bad at it. You know, maybe it's really not, you know, the manager's fault. Maybe you're just pretty shitty. You know, I've definitely had people work here who were terrible, who thought they were awesome, but they were just horrible.
But at that point, it's more of like self-reflection. You have to kind of take a step back and look at yourself, your career, and, you know, whether or not what you're doing is the right decision for you. Maybe you want to switch. If you're in compliance, you want to move over to fintech. That's something that you have to look at yourself and say, did I really make the right career choice?
That's really smart. You know what? That's so true. And can I tell you, I've been that way, you know, myself. I've tried different things that I, you know, was terrible at. You know, I just didn't have the right skills, the right temperament, the right ability. And then I have to say to myself, you know what? It's not the company. And you see this with resumes too, which is really interesting. You know, this is for hiring managers and HR people too. Like, you'll see somebody will be jumpy, and then they may be kind of ruled against getting an interview or hired because, well, look at their jumpiness. But sometimes if you delve down into it, the jumpiness isn't because they're just willy-nilly. That's kind of a silly word, right? They just kind of jump around to like different jobs. They really are like in one space, and they're like, okay, it's not working here at Citigroup. Let me go to J.P. Morgan because maybe it's different at J.P. Morgan. Then you go to J.P. Morgan, you go, not really good. Let me go to Morgan Stanley. But they're all the same job, and then you realize, you know what? It's just these jobs.
Yeah.
It's not right, and I gotta, like Nicole was saying, have like a little self-reflection and say, you know what? This is. I'm going up the, you know, I'm just barking up the wrong tree.
And it's hard, you know, to actually come to that realization when you've been doing something so long. I mean, these people devoted most of their life to go to school for this kind of stuff and get a degree in it. And, you know, they really thought this is the career path I want. So to actually build up the self-confidence to really look and see what's in front of you and say, wow, this isn't the right decision for me, that, you know, takes time. It's not something that you're going to really throw yourself into a new position overnight, you know what I mean? This like takes time to really look at and think over and decide whether or not you really did make the right decision.
You know, you're so right with that. Like, I'll give an example to you know, to your point. I'll see this. Give you one group of people with attorneys. Think about it. If you're a good, successful attorney, you work so hard all throughout. You know, elementary school, middle school, high school, college, law school. And then you have to take the bar, and then maybe, let's say here in New York, you join one of these really top firms, and you're making a lot of money out of the door, you know, out of the gate when you graduate. You know, maybe you're making, you know, 200 and change or more, you know, your first year as still a relatively young person. And then I can't tell you how many people over the years I'll speak to who then they're an attorney, they'll be at one firm, right? And then they stay there a year or so, then try another law firm, and then maybe a third. And they're miserable. They just hate it. They just hate that life. You know, they grew up watching TV and seeing attorneys, you know, come into the courtroom and get their innocent, you know, the person who they're representing who's really innocent but is going to be on, you know, tried for murder, and they get him off, and everything is great and cheering, and wow, this is glamorous. And they realize the life of an attorney is not like that at all. And like, what did I do? And the reason I see a lot, like, bring up the attorneys, because then they'll move into an area that I do is compliance and say, hey, how can I segue? But they have a hard time initially doing that because their ego And I can't blame them. You know what I mean? They put so much time and effort
Yeah.
and money, and they have a certain social status, attended with it, of
Right.
being in that space. But then to kind of say, okay, I'm going to completely stop that. And everyone I went to law school with, everybody, my peers, other lawyers, they're going to all look at me like, what are you doing? And does that make me feel like a loser? But you have to be really strong. You know, you think about it. You have to be really internally strong to say, you know what, the hell with that. I have to do what's right for me. You know what I mean? I'm not going to do this because of, this peer pressure. I'm not going to do this because of society. I'm not going to do this because I'm going to feel I'm going to let my parents down. I'm not going to let that my spouse is going to think I'm an idiot doing that. You got to, really say, hey, I am probably going in the wrong direction. I'm working in the wrong area, and even though I put a lot of time and effort into it, you know what? I got to just cut my losses and say, you know what? Cut the losses and find something else, and that's incredibly hard to do. So it's interesting. So if you think about like what starts out, and it's right before we did this podcast, we were just kind of brainstorming, and it seems like kind of cut and dried at first. Like, okay, here's what you need to think of before you look for another job. But when you start peeling back the layers of the onion, you think about it. There's so much to it. It's not so easy. And that's why I really counsel people. And again, man, this sounds like, against. You would think a recruiter wouldn't do this, but I would really encourage people before you think of looking to really look inside of yourself first and think, what is happening? Yeah, yes, many times bosses, management, your coworkers, they're just toxic and you got to walk away. We've all been in those situations. We know what happens. But other times it's like, maybe, it's just you're this is not for you. And that's not a bad thing. That's actually a good thing. You're better off finding out early on, what you're good at. And we're going to go into more detail of these themes later on, but a big theme I've seen in people over the years who succeed is that if they find what they're good at and they like doing it and they enjoy doing it, they're passionate about doing it, they tend to succeed more because for them, it's not really work in the conventional sense. Yeah, it's work in the sense that you're going somewhere and you're putting in long days, but you kind of like it and you enjoy
it, right.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to a new hire who feels it was kind of a bait and switch? Like, how long should they give it?
Wow, that's a good question. I guess I would do that. When you say bait and switch, meaning like what? Like what? Like
just day one, they realize their boss is a jerk, their coworkers are garbage, and your tasks aren't what was listed in the job description. There's just bureaucracy. Ugh, it's like a singing girl. Just everything's terrible. You were promised you can work remotely some days, and they're like, actually, we want you in the office 5 days a week.
Right.
How long should
just before I answer, this is hypothetical, right? This is not.
I was baited and switched by Jackie.
This is not here, right?
I'm seeking counsel from the only person I know.
Right. This is just right now. This is like a bad, not here, somewhere else. So you know what? This happens all the time. And sometimes it might be purposeful. Sometimes I think it's just with these big corporations, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. I've absolutely heard people, and this is so frustrating for people. They'll and I'm not exaggerating. Some of these big banks, they'll bring them in for a certain job, right? Everything's and you're going to be, based in Manhattan, right? Day one, oh no, you have to go to, somewhere in New Jersey or somewhere in Brooklyn. And they're saying, wait a minute, I live all the way out far in Long Island. And for those people not in the New York area, I know you have no idea what I'm talking about, but just bear with me that, like, it's a faraway place. You can't commute. You know what I mean? It's going to take forever to get. They're not being spoiled. It's just if you're all the way in Suffolk County, Long Island, and you got to go to, Brooklyn or you got to go to New Jersey, it's like 3 hour, 2 hour with traffic. It's going to take 2 hours.
It's horrible.
Horrible. So you just can't. It's really impossible. And yeah, so literally, like the first day they show up, they're told a different job, or they start and it's really pretty clear that their job had certain expectations at a certain level, and you realize, oh my God, this level is so beneath me. And this happens more than you guys would think. This happens very often. They present the job like, oh, you're going to be at this level. You're going to do this important, meaningful work. And I've been dealing with someone like this with ladies. He goes, hey, they signed me up to do this. I'm supposed to be leading, the change and putting in all these new initiatives and dealing with senior management. And they have me just doing very basic, core, boring, grunt work. So the first thing I would say is, you have to diplomatically speak to your hiring manager about it. And that's not easy.
No, that's what I was going to
That's
say.
not easy.
It's hard to actually come to the realization, like, wow, I really got screwed over here. I'm not doing what I was told I would be. And just have the courage to actually speak up. Because you have to think about it, too. You're a new employee, right? So you don't want to make a bad impression on yourself and go up to the HR and be like, hey, this is not what you guys hired me for, or at least said you were going to hire me for. So a lot of people, I feel like, would hold off on that and kind of say, oh, let me take some time. Let me give it a month or so to kind of see what's going on. But I think, honestly, like, after a week or so, if it's really not what you were told it's going to be, that's the time to speak up. Why would you wait, I mean, obviously, like, I haven't been in that situation, but I'm just thinking from a logical standpoint, why would you hold off on that? Like, it's better to say something early and get out of the situation instead of staying there for a long time and being miserable.
Absolutely right. And see, this is what I'm excited. I'm glad Nicole, brought up doing a podcast where you could be more in depth about these things, because oftentimes when you read people who write about these subject matters, they gloss over it. They could say, oh, speak to HR, and that's done. You know what I mean? Like, okay, it's problem solved. But the reality is, not so easy.
Yeah.
Not so easy. So you're the new person, no matter what age you are and how much experience you have, it's awkward. Because then you're starting to doubt, all right, maybe I misunderstood, or maybe, they're just starting me out gradually and I'm going to build up. I don't want to be that guy, who's complaining day one, as Nicole said. So it's scary. And that's another thing people don't talk about when it comes to careers and interviewing. It's freaking scary as hell to do a lot of these things. I don't care how, I got to tell you, my own experience, I don't care what level you're at. Your stomach is turning. You're getting the butterflies in the stomach. You're feeling a little nauseous. It's very scary when you're doing these things about your career, because you're worried, you don't want to look bad, you don't want to lose your job, you don't want to get fired, you don't want to do something stupid, you don't want to get a bad reputation. So everything you do, you have to kind of be very thoughtful about it. So I would say this, Christine, the first thing I would do is just give it a little time. Then I personally, probably what I would do is I would kind of seek out some of my coworkers and just feel them out to see, all right, what's the deal? Then you have to sit down with your manager and say, hey, here's what I thought we were supposed to do, and we're not, like, what do we do now?
Right. And
even then that's tough, because if they come back to you, oh no, it's this, then you got a tough decision to make. Then it's another tough decision. Do you you push back, but then you got to decide, is you just have to kind of pull the trigger and leave, or do you go up to the next level? So these things get really complex, and I think we'd have to look at each one in its own way, because each one is going to be unique. But I think definitely I would speak to the people around you to get a consensus of what's happening. Speak to your manager, speak to the HR person, and then you have to make a value decision. Do I just suck it up and do this for a year so it's on my resume and then leave? Do you just cut your losses and leave? And this is why I say it's like everyone has to be individual, because it depends on your financial situation too. You might not be able to leave. You might be in a certain financial strait that if you leave, you're not going to collect unemployment because you're quitting, and then you don't have the money to support you, so you might have to suck it up. Yeah. But one of the things what I want to do with this podcast too is that people listen to it. If you have some of these issues, and Nicole will put on the podcast the information, you can always call us here. And myself or one of the other recruiters or other folks here would be glad to help you out. I'm not going to say we have all the answers, but sometimes it's really good to just talk it through, and we'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, for sure. But that kind of is a good segue into, the actual job search process. It's not easy to start having your own job search and looking for a new position. So in that sense, what do you think is like the best thing to do to kind of mentally and physically prepare yourself for starting a new job search?
That's a good question, because it's, right now you can't escape reading about this is the hottest job market ever, low unemployment, this is so great, the economy is great, the stock market is great, you got to get a good job. And what I'm finding out in reality from the people I speak with, yes, in certain segments it's hot and it's robust and there are a lot of jobs and there's a lot of action, but not for everybody. It's not, when you hear in the news, it makes it sound like this is universal. But what I see, no, it's, certain groups may benefit. If you're, let's say, an engineer, technology professional in Silicon Valley, yeah, your phone is ringing off the hook. Recruiters are constantly calling you. You're getting solicited from LinkedIn all the time, to interview and get a new job. If you're in my area, compliance, which for years was blazing hot, now with deregulation and nearshoring and offshoring and technology, not so hot. They're jobs, but nowhere near what you would think when you read about it. So, number one, I would say familiarize yourself with the market you're in to see the degree of hotness or coldness. You want to find out, hey, if I'm going there, because you want to manage expectations. You want to go and see, okay, am I going into something that's really hot or really cold, or what should I expect? Because in my area, it was a gradual getting colder with deregulation. This is not politics, it's just what it is. With the new administration, they're very much for deregulation. So you saw the banks and other companies didn't put a premium on it, what they used to. But when people were first looking, they didn't realize this shift, so they were still looking as if it was way hot. And they were very disappointed and very frustrated because for years, literally, for 10, 15, 20 years, it was like straight up. If you would chart it, it was just nonstop straight up. So they were thinking, oh, straight up. And every time people would leave, they would get a 20% bump up. It was incredible. So let's say, you have a job, you're making 100. A year later you leave, you're getting 120. Then another year or so you leave, you get, whatever 20% of that is. You get, my math isn't good. So maybe like 140, 150, and so on. So they were used to that. So when they confront a market that shifted, their heads were spinning. Like, what the hell's going on here? Why am I not getting any nibbles? Is something wrong? Did someone blackball me? What's happening? So you want to find out the degree of hotness or coldness of your market. And the way you could do that is you could contact some recruiters in your space who are, known in that area, who understand it, and just feel them out. Because they're financially motivated. I don't mean this to sound cold or cynical. A recruiter is financially compensated when they place people. So their incentive is to place you, so they have no reason to BS you. So if you contact them, hey, am I marketable? Do I have the skills that are in demand now? Yes or no? If it's yes, they're going to want to help you because they know if Christine sends the resume and she's in an area that's hot, hey, I'm going to work on it because I'm going to be able to place her and make money. If the area she's in is cold, I'm not going to, I'm going to be straight up because I have nothing to gain from it. I'm probably not going to be able to place her, so why tell her it's, anything different than cold? You could ask your friends and colleagues, and that you got to be careful about because, you don't want to blow up your spot, but you want to be able to kind of, hey, Christine, what's going on? Have you been looking, Nicole, anything out there? What do you think? Can you feel around from your peers and network how that market is? Then once you start getting ready, here's what I would suggest, and I think this might be unpopular opinion, but you have to be prepared for a marathon. And what I mean by a marathon is this: it's very rare if you're a mid to senior level executive, you're just going to go for an interview and get the job. It's going to take 3 to 6 months. You're going to have to meet with, no exaggeration, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people over the course of time. And then over that course of time, there's going to be gaps, and there's going to be silence, and there's going to be no feedback, and you're not going to hear anything. So it's really stressful. So I would suggest, number one, you just got to get your mindset that, hey, this is not a sprint. This is a marathon. I'm going to have to be prepared. This is going to take 6 months, and it's going to be an emotional roller coaster. You go in, you do great. Then maybe you have another interview, and maybe not so great, and then you feel miserable. Then you're nervous, like, is my boss going to find out I'm interviewing? He or she looked at me funny. What's going to happen? Maybe I'm... So you're dealing with this really wave and back and forth of different emotions and both, you're excited one day that you could get this great job and make all this more money, and it's not going to work, and I'm stuck where I am, and I hate where I am. So prepare mentally. This is what's going to happen. Go into it knowing this. So as you're going through it, you're like, all right, I remember hearing Jack in the podcast that this is not going to be easy. I'm going to have to meet a whole lot of people. I'm going to deal with, communications that are going to go silent for a while. I'm not going to get feedback at times. I'm going to have some interviews that are good, some that are terrible, some in between, and this is part of the game. So get your mindset. Then I would suggest this. You want to prepare almost like you're an athlete, where you have to get sleep, eat right, exercise, and I'm not saying this to be like, this buff, whatever. It's more of, it's an endurance test. It's an endurance test. So if you've got to do your full-time job and then have a part-time job which is looking for a job, going on the job boards, filling out applications, sending resumes, going on and I'm giving going to one interview 3, 6, 9 people. But if you're going to 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of them and doing the same thing, that takes a lot out of you. So you really want to be on your best, because what happened is this. Because if you're not, you're going to come into one interview, the last interview out of 5 interviews, and you're tired, you're cranky, you're exhausted, you're kind of snippy, and it's just going to. Nicole just showed us the phone. What is that? Is that like we're running out of?
Oh no, just keep time. But yeah. I think you're making a good point with that, just to mentally and physically prepare yourself for sure. And just to realize that, for some of these people, they've been at the same position for a really long time. I mean, we've seen candidates that have been at their job for, 15, 20 plus years. So once they're gone and they have to start looking again, they have to realize that technology's changed too. A lot of technology is taking over some of these positions. Like we were talking about the other day, a lot of traders, their jobs are being taken over by computers. And just the application process in general, when you're filling out applications online, they're long and they're tedious. It's not, the same thing where you could just submit a resume and be done. These are things you have to go through the entire application, fill out anything from your name, phone number, email address, different specialties, everything like that. So it takes time. So you really have to be mentally prepared for the whole new shift of the application process in general.
That's absolutely right. I mean, what happened, it used to be, when I first started recruiting, the average age, let's say, of an internal HR person was, anywhere from 35 to 55, let's say. And that person was an expert in their space, whether they were, the internal HR, recruiter, maybe they specialized in accountants or lawyers or whatever, and they knew it really well. So that if a candidate dealt, and they would deal directly, candidate will I don't want to make myself sound really old, but they fax a resume into the, to the firm, and the person would get the resume, contact, the candidate, set up a meeting, and they could have a really intelligent conversation because they would know what the candidate was doing. Fast forward to now, technology has been deployed throughout HR with the best of intentions to make it easier, but I think personally, it's just created horrific results. So you have this technology, as Nicole was saying, so if you haven't been in the market for a while, be prepared. You're going to have to fill out this application. Maybe you go on ZipRecruiter or Indeed or LinkedIn or any job board, and you have to fill out these lengthy, glitchy applications that ask for all this personal information. And it's not unified. So if you go to one site, it's not like you can just save it for everything else. Or if you're on one site and then you do multiple jobs, you have to do it all over again. So it's time consuming, it's draining, it's annoying. And then to add insult to injury, when you send it, a lot of times you don't even get a confirmation. So you have no idea, did they get it? Did they not get it? Did it go into a black hole of space? Did it disappear?
Plus ghosting too is a huge thing now. That's the trending
topic
I see all the time.
Exactly. So let's say you finally get an interview, right? You finally get an interview, and now, God forbid, they bring you in person for the first interview, right? So now it's a phone interview. It's the first interview, which I get, it saves time, but in my experience, it's a little just if you like the person enough, bring them in to meet with them, see who they are. But it's a phone interview. For the phone interview, then you might Nicole said, get ghosted, then you might not hear back for weeks. But this is where it gets really crazy. So let's say this happened today, right? I'm on a phone interview, and hey, Jack, it's great, speaking to you. Okay, we'll get back to you, right? Day go by, week go by, month go by, 3 months go by. Then I swear to you, I'm not exaggerating. Then September, you'll get an email. Okay, hey, we'd like you to come in and meet with Christine tomorrow at 8:05. Thank you. And you're like, what? What job is this anyway?
Yeah.
I forgot all about it.
By that time, the candidate's usually, I got a new job.
Right.
Thanks.
I have a new job, or that's pretty rude, so I don't want to go back to you. Or I'm close to another job, and that happens no matter what level that's happening. So it's very bad, and it just spiraled out of control. So that's another thing you have to look at. The whole interview process lately is very cold. is it's inhumane. It's I was going to say dehumidifier, but that really it's not a dehumidifier.
No, I don't think so.
Right?
No,
Just sucks the moisture out of you.
Yes,
Yeah,
it is.
seriously.
Exactly.
Right,
It sucks. What do you call something that sucks the life out of you? It's a de-life-ifier or something?
Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah.
De-life-ifier.
It does. It does. It saps your energy. I gotta tell you, because it's so interesting. Because like we're starting this startup, right? WeCruitr, which is and I'm not going to kind of make this a shameless plug, although I really am. It's that it's a social media platform where the primary thing is if you're a job seeker, you can connect with recruiters who will be motivated to get you a job, right? And one of the reasons we're doing that is because rather than complaining about how bad things are, I figured, you know what? Let me put my money where my mouth is and my time and efforts and try to do something better. So figuring, hey, because it is so bad, and I hear it from so many people, and that's what really kind of spurred us to try this new thing, because everybody the same exact story. You know, send my resume, don't hear back. Fill out applications, don't hear back. Go for an interview, don't hear back. You know, they have a list of bullet points of 20 bullet points in the job description. Oh, sorry, you don't have all 20 of them. Sorry, next. And then you look at these job descriptions that have all these bullet points and you think, oh my God, this is a really senior level role. I'm going for it. And then, oh no, this is a junior level role. And you're like, what? And it's like just painful for so many people to go through it. Now, do people get hired? Absolutely. Do people get jobs? Absolutely. Do people make more money with some of the jobs? Absolutely. But that's easy. You know what I mean? When that happens, that's easy. So if you listen to the podcast and you get a job tomorrow, you're like, Jack, you're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about. Good. I'm glad you got that job. Now, that's fantastic. I'm happy for you. But that was easy. But for the other people who it's not easy, that's really what I want to make sure they're prepared for. Because I'll tell you this, it really screws with people's minds when they go through this. Because you have people who feel they have success in their career, they're doing well, they're looking to better themselves, and now it's like they get punched in the face over and over again. You know, they don't hear back. They have to fill out all these lengthy applications. They have to upload their resume that just says what the application says already, and nothing. And they feel, what happened? Am I useless? Am I not wanted anymore? You know, am I just done? And it really, because people, and this is a weird thing too, that instead of communicating with other people about what they're going through in our society, it's so success driven, is that if you're doing well, how you doing, Nicole? Great, I'm doing awesome. I got, look at this great house I have. Look at this great car I drive. Look at my beach house. But if someone's not doing great, they don't say anything. So what ends up happening for people who go through this process, they withdraw because they start feeling, what's wrong with me? Supposedly a hot market, everything is great, and I'm not getting interviews, I'm not getting feedback, my resumes aren't being acknowledged. Oh my God. So I think it's important to give, both sides. That yes, great things happen, great people get, jobs, and that's awesome. But a lot have to endure this. So I want you to be prepared if you're going through this is happening. And then also, for other people involved with the process, just to shed a little light on it, like if you're a hiring manager, HR person, what have you, to get, an understanding how unhappy and miserable candidates are. And don't get me wrong, I'm not blaming, anybody, because sometimes you can't, it's just the system that's at fault. It's not the individual, it's the way things are structured. But just to understand, this is what's going on, that people don't talk about it. Because they don't want to talk about it, because no one wants to brag. Who's going to brag to their friends? You're out, in a social engagement with friends. Oh, hey, guess what? I applied to 20 jobs. I didn't hear back from any. No one's going to say that. Oh, hey, Jack, do you want an interview? How was it? I don't know. No one got back to me. No one says that. So they just don't say anything, and they just think it's them. So just for those going through it, I could assure you, you're not unique. This is what happens, and those people who are looking to go, through the interview process, just be prepared. And I don't mean to scare you off not to do it. I just rather, my whole thing is this, I'm a really optimistic guy, right? So I'm always looking at the positive, but at the same time, I try not to be, ignore what issues or problems could confront
You're realistic.
you. Realistic, exactly. Yeah. To be realistic too. So I want to kind of share both spectrums, and maybe sometimes I dwell a little bit too much on the realism, which could be perceived sometimes as pessimism, but you're prepared. This way you know what you're getting into, and it doesn't, and I think if you're prepared for that, then it doesn't throw you off your game, because you're like, oh, okay, I knew this was going to happen, so I'm not going to.
It's better to be real with people than to sugarcoat everything. But I think overall, just, the main theme of all of this is to be mentally prepared, physically prepared, and just, go in with a good mindset when you're starting your job search. Know what the real world is and what is going on, and don't be fooled by these articles that you see that everything's saying, oh, it's great, everything's going super fantastic, and you'll get a job in 2 seconds. Because, sometimes, like you said, it is easy for people, and that does happen for them. But, for a majority of the people, at least that we talk to in different candidates, it's difficult. It's a hard process. So just know that going in and really prep yourself for it, and you'll come out okay, 100%.
I just wanted to know, when did you notice this paradigm shift? Did it happen slowly or overnight?
Yeah, you know what? I don't know. There's like a quote, but I don't know who. See, I should have, known this so I could be smart. Where, it happened gradually, then all of a sudden.
Yeah.
How'd you lose your wealth gradually, all of a sudden? It was like gradual, and then all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Like I would say over the last 2 or 3 years. It's kind of a gradual, and then all of a sudden you realize, what is going on here?
Right.
This just really changed dramatically.
Well, there just started to be articles where they're shedding light on like these issues that are happening, with different candidates in the job market altogether. So it's just starting to come into light, and people are just starting now to realize, like, everything's not so dandy.
But, and that's what happens. What I see sometimes, maybe when I first started, it was very freewheeling. You didn't have to get contracts to, work with certain companies. You could just on a handshake get stuff done, or even a verbal agreement to just get things done. To now, and you could deal with the hiring manager directly. It was very free flowing, and maybe that was too wide open. And now maybe it's too technology, automation, ATS, internal systems driven, and less, interaction. So maybe maybe that pendulum will swing back somewhere else once, as people like us are talking about it. As Nicole's saying, you're seeing, more people bringing it to light. So, and hopefully that's one of the good parts about this podcast, is that we could bring up these, issues that we see, because we're in a space where we deal with hiring managers, human resource professionals, job seekers, hiring managers every day, all day long. So we really get a good consensus of what's happening. So, I hope, everyone liked this. This is literally our first try of doing it. So, judge us, in that way. And I think we'll get better and better as we go along. And if you have any questions or you have any suggestions for future ones, let Nicole or Christine and myself know, and we're glad to talk about it.
Yeah, seriously, we appreciate any feedback that you guys give us, especially with our new site, WeCruitr, that we've been working on. We've received tons of feedback from all of our users, and we really appreciate every single one of you. So we hope for the same results with the podcast. If you really have anything, if you love us, hate us, want us to talk about something specifically, don't hesitate to let us know, because we are all ears, and we'll definitely, adjust based on what you guys want to hear.
Great. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks.